Hey everybody, I'm Jack Rita. I'm the designer of Firefly Misbehavin, which is a deck building card game set in the Firefly verse. And I'm going to be going over the circle cards that comprise the 1/3 of the market deck for the core deck. So the market is cards that you're going to be buying essentially to add to your deck over the course of the game. That's what you're building your deck with. Those market cards are divided into 3 groups based geographically on the Firefly verse. So there's a core deck, a border deck, and a rim deck. So there are 25 cards in each deck, and each set of those 25 is divided into thirds. So 1/3 of them are marked with a little square, 1/3 are marked with a triangle, and then the other third are marked with a circle. And the circle ones are essentially the primary cards. They're going to be in every game. Now, some of the episode cards will let you know which of these market card sets to not use, or really which ones you are going to use. You're always going to use the circle ones because those will contain your main characters from the show that aren't part of a starting deck. So the Serenity is one of the 4 factions you can play, and that deck is has Mal and Zoe in it, but those are the only main characters that start off in that deck. So the other ones are in the border deck and the core deck. So the core deck is what we're going to be talking about today. So we have 9 cards that are in that core deck. I'm going to talk about what their effects are and what cards are in them, and give you a sense of what will show up. You're always going to have 2 cards from each of those decks that are available for sale at the start of each turn. So as you're spending your influence and adding those cards to your deck, it will replenish at the start of the next turn. You're not likely to go through all of the cards, even if you're just using the circle cards, because you're not going to be buying a lot of those cards from the deck, because you also have the supply sets, which are separate from the market. So let's take a look at these cards here. Our first one is the Alliance Ident card. So that card, it has a cost of 4 influence to get it. It gives you an influence, which is nice there. It also has 1 power if it's in your tableau. And it has the attribute for Eves Down. That is the faction that has Badger in it. So because it has that in there, it's potentially cheaper for Eves Down to recruit this card into their deck. If they spend verse tokens, they lower the price. So each verse token will make this card 1 cheaper. So it's a card that wants to be in that deck. And what does it do? Well, it's an item, and when you play it, if you use an activation, so either when you play it, immediately trigger it, or if it's already in your tableau, you use an activation to trigger it, and it lets you spend credits as influence. So normally, you can only spend credits as influence if you're making a deal. But for a normal recruitment, you can't use those credits. However, the Alliance Ident card makes that a possibility. So you start to pick up a lot of credits, and then you use the Ident card, and then you're just spending credits with influence or instead of influence to really pick up some more expensive cards. So this is a great to combo with the Shiny. Shinies are a supply set. They're in every game, and you can just spend them to get credits. So you can use them for influence, but they're great for getting credits. And if you've got something like the Alliance Ident card, that is a great card to have in there, especially if you are generating credits. And you can use somebody like Badger. His ability is to just get credits. So it's a great combination. All right, our next card is Anara. So this is a character, and if you want to add her to your deck, she'll be in the core. You got to dig her out. So she costs 6. She's a little more expensive, but that is because she has 2 influence built in and 2 power. She's a very valuable card to get into your deck. She can make deals as well, so she has the deal attribute. Now, you'll notice that she has 2 Serenity icons in here. This is the only card in the game, currently anyway, that has 2 icons in it, and it's the same icon. That means that Serenity can spend verse tokens to lower the price, but it costs them 2 tokens to lower the price of Anara by 1. So thematically what it is she wants to be in Serenity's deck, but she also wants to give Mal grief. And just, she's not going to make it easy for him. So that's the reasoning behind that. So again, it's going to be easier for Serenity to get Inara into that deck than for any of the other factions. But it's not going to be super easy for anybody. Now, what's her ability? Well, again, if you play Inara and immediately trigger her, or if she's already in your tableau and you use your activation to trigger her, you gain 2 credits. So she's a working gal. She can earn money that you can use. And if you've got both of these cards in there, you've got a source of income and then a way to spend that. Now, each of these requires an activation. That's what that lightning bolt indicates. It requires an activation. So you'll have to have a way to have 2 activations on a turn if you want to use both of them. But you could use an hour on one turn, pick up some credits, and on the next turn, spend those credits as influence. So, all right, our next card is Jubal Early, another character found in the core. And this is also a very powerful card, and that is why the cost is 7. So 7 is one of the most expensive cards in the game, but that is because Jubal Early's got a lot going on. 1 influence. So again, you can use this card to recruit other cards. 3 power. Now that's a big deal for a couple of reasons. 1, if Jubal Early is in your tableau, that's 3 points closer towards victory if you're playing a standard win condition. Now, he has 2 attributes. He can make deals. He can be used in a fight. And if he's in a fight, he's adding 3 power to that fight. So that is a big deal as well. Now, he has the Alliance icon in there. So he would like to be in the Alliance deck. And if they spend verse tokens, they can discount Jubal Early's price. And then his ability, again, it requires an activation. It lets you dispatch a character in play, and then you gain an activation. So what does that mean? Well, dispatching a character means you are putting them into the recycle pile for that player. Now, character in play means they're in the tableau or they're in the display area. So you could be in the middle of a fight and you've got Jubal Early in your tableau or in your hand. If you can spend an activation, well, if he's in play already, if the fight has happened, he'd need to be in play. Spend that activation to trigger him, and then that character is out of the fight, or they're out of the tableau. Somebody's going for the win, or they just have a character that you don't want to have to deal with. Get them out there, and then you get an activation, which means you can do something else. You can play another card, you can trigger another card's effect, or you could make a deal or pick a fight. So any activations that you gain in the middle of a fight, you can still use after that fight, or you could use it during the fight. So Jubal Early, a very versatile, all-around, very useful character to get. All right, our next card is Osiris. This is a planet location card. Also has the Alliance symbol, so the Alliance would like to get this in there. This is a card that gives you 2 influence. It also has 4 power, which is very useful for a win condition. And that's because it's going to give you 4 power towards the win, and it has a natural defense of 7. So that's just going to be hard for somebody to either nab from you or dispatch from your tableau if you are going for the win. And it does have a pretty useful ability. So again, it requires an activation, but it lets you discard from your tableau to gain 2 verse tokens or draw 3 cards. So depending on what it is that you really need at any given moment, if you have the activation to spend, picking up 3 more cards. So you can play this, trigger it immediately for the 3 cards by discarding it from your tableau, or getting the 2 verse tokens. It's great to start stockpiling those verse tokens because those can give you more activations. They can let you draw cards. They can do a number of different things depending on your faction. All right. This brings us to River Tam. So another one of our main characters and another powerful card. She has a cost of 5. No attributes, so she's not necessarily, I want to be part of Serenity. Can be used in a fight, 3 power in a fight, no influence. But a couple other things to note here. So first I want to cover her ability. So her ability requires an activation. It lets you discard any number of cards from your hand and draw that many. So if you just didn't get what you wanted for that turn because you need particular cards, maybe influence or what have you, you can use your activation to trigger River Tam and ditch your whole hand and draw that many cards back up. But the other thing she has on here is a mandatory effect. So you have to discard 2 influence, and that's either from your hand or from your tableau or both, or else you have to discard River Tam from your tableau at the start of your turn. So if you have played River Tam to your tableau because you want that 3 power or you want to be able to use this ability on a subsequent turn, the start of your next turn, you have to discard 2 influence. So that can be a big deal. This is a card you're not necessarily going to want to put into your tableau until later in the game when you are no longer worried about needing influence to get more cards. You got all the cards that you want. Now you've got 2 influence that you can just discard in order to keep River in the tableau. 3 power towards the win, but a useful ability. 3 power in a fight if you need it. So very handy. All right, next up we have Shepherd Book, so another main character. Shepherd Book costs 5. He's got 2 influence, so great card to pick up early in the game to use for recruiting and making deals. 1 power. He's got an ability that does not require an activation, so it just trigger this card during a fight. So Book would need to be in your tableau, but then you just trigger him. Doesn't require any activation. If you do it while he's in a fight, it lets you dispatch a character in a display area. So that is a character that is in that fight already, or lets you draw a card. So if somebody is using a lot of Misbehaves against you, those aren't characters. You can't dispatch them, but maybe you've got a Misbehave in your deck and you're hoping to draw it. So if you're in a fight, Book can be a clutch character to help you out in the right circumstances. All right. We next have the most expensive card in the game at Sinon. That is another planet, a location. It costs 8. It's going to give you 3 influence. So if you can pick up this card in the first half of the game, maybe by making a deal or using an Alliance Ident card to spend credits as influence, this is a card that's going to be great for recruiting and making deals. So 3 influence there. But that's the big thing right there. Bam, 5 power. That's the most power that any card has. Once that card gets into your tableau, it's got an 8 defense, so it's hard to take this away from anybody. But it's giving you almost halfway to victory condition, depending on the player count, a third of the way in other cases. Good ability as well. Requires an activation. If you play this and trigger it, or trigger it with an activation, you draw a card. Then you gain 2 activations. Or you can discard this card to force a player to add 2 the black cards to their recycle pile. So they're always going to draw the card. The choice is between gaining 2 activations or forcing someone to add 2 the black to their recycle pile. Now, the black is a supply card. It's in every game, and it's a garbage card. It's not one that you want to get. It just clogs up your deck because it doesn't really do anything, and it's hard to get rid of. So if they've picked up a couple of those, it's definitely going to cause problems for them as they try to go for the win. They're drawing a hand of 5 cards, hoping to get a lot of fight to defend themselves, and they've drawn the black. That's not going to help them out too much. All right, down to the last 2 cards, we have Simon Tam. So Simon also going to be in your core deck. Costs 5. He's got 1 influence, 2 power, and he has an ability that does not require an activation. Trigger this card to prevent a character from being dispatched. So again, it needs to be in your tableau. Doesn't require an activation to trigger him. You just do. You trigger him, and if somebody's using Jubal Early, for example, to dispatch one of your characters, you can say no. Simon is going to prevent that from from happening. So good to get in there. Now remember, the thing with triggered cards is at the end of your turn, for each card that you leave in your tableau triggered, that is turned sideways, you're going to draw 1 fewer card when you're replenishing your hand. So normally you're drawing 5 cards, but if you've left Simon Tam triggered in there, you're only going to draw 4. And if you've got a couple other triggered in there, again, you're drawing 1 card fewer than you normally would. So you got to be careful about that. Their power still contributes towards the win. So maybe you're not too worried. Maybe 4 cards is enough. And if you've got verse tokens, you might be able to draw more cards or do other things with it. And then finally, our last card in the core deck is the Yunchi, and it's a ship. So this one has the ship attribute. It costs 6. It's a different Firefly. 1 influence and 3 power. So this is pretty unusual. A lot of the ships don't have influence, but this one does. And it has another ability that does not require an activation. It just needs to be in your tableau. You trigger it, and then trigger this card to draw a card when you play a maneuver. So most of the maneuvers require you to have a ship. So if you have the Yunchi in your tableau, then you're able to play maneuvers, and you can use verse tokens to replay a maneuver. But then you can trigger this to draw a card when you do play a maneuver. So you could build some nice synergies that way, depending on which maneuvers are in the game and that you have added to your deck, and whether you're using them with or without the first tokens. So that's what's in there. So like I said, any game of Firefly that you're going to play, these 9 cards are going to be in the core deck. There may be several more, depending on whether you're using the entire market deck for each of the 3 markets, or if you're using an episode that has dictated which ones to use, or you've just decided we're only going to use the circles and the triangles, or the circles and the squares, or just the circles themselves, because we really want to get to those characters and ensure that they're in the game. So that's it for this video. If you have any questions about this or comments, let me know. And thanks for watching. We'll see you again soon.